start the meeting. I call the meeting of the Patton Township Board of Supervisors to order this November the 17th, 2021. If you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next additions to the posted agenda. Does any member of the board wish to add an item to the agenda for consideration that's not already on the agenda? Seeing no one suggesting an additional agenda item, we'll move on to public comments. First thing, just to point out, on our posted agenda we have a photograph of our esteemed supervisor Pamela Robb, who is a Army veteran, and this past week received one of the Happy Valley Quilts of Honor, along with 3 other veterans, local veterans. So you see that Doug and I were present, and Chief Jolly, to help her celebrate her honor. So we're very proud of our board member. And Pam, is there anything you wish to say?
No, I would just like to say thank you to all of my guests that were there and those who were there in spirit, and like Betsy and Anita and Elliot, and the rest of the Patton Township staff and board. It was truly an honor to receive the Quilt of Valor. And the last person on that photograph is from College Township, Frank, Vice Chair, who I truly appreciate, and with Patty Stevens from Ferguson, another board supervisor who attended, but mostly good friends, Charles and Joe Dumas, and of course my family, Dr. Susanna Dare, and Leslie Lang. Dr. I want to not pronounce her name incorrectly, Nalini Krishna. Thank you.
Krishna Kuti, yeah.
Thank you all, and especially to the organizers, Sharon Lucas, who is, they called her the vet lady. So Penn State, and to the organization Quilts of Valor, thank you so much.
Any other members of the public wish to address the board at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, 3A, presentation public hearing, the broadband expansion study. We have the chair of that study group with us, former Patton Township Supervisor Jeff Luck, who served as a consultant for the township on this study. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. Just to introduce myself again, I'm Jeff Luck, and for the purposes of this presentation, I'm the facilitator for the Patton Township Ad Hoc Broadband Study Group. First, some background. The board authorized this study group almost 2 years ago in 2019. Since then, the group acquired a legal opinion on broadband options for the township. Doug executed an online walk-up survey developed by the group, and the group discussed broadband challenges with local internet service providers. The group is comprised of township residents with relevant experience, and I'd like to recognize them. Kathy Alloway is the former director of Shklow Library. Mike Carey is a network solutions architect. You know Doug Erickson, township manager. Stephen Humphrey is a professor of management at Penn State. David Pankow is the president of the Patton Township Business Association. and you know Dan Trevino, Patton Township Supervisor. My day job is as a technology lead at WPSU Penn State Public Media. I won't reiterate the need for broadband, it's in the news, but I do want to read part of this quote from the American Jobs Plan because I think it captures the sense of both the study group and the survey responses. Continually providing subsidies to cover the cost of overpriced internet service is not the right long-term solution for consumers or taxpayers. Americans pay too much for the internet, much more than people in many other countries. The very recently signed infrastructure bill addresses two categories of broadband need, and I'll apply these categories to Patton Township. As far as we can determine, the township has 14 homes that have no access to at least 25 megabit per second download service or 3 megabit per second upload broadband service. We know Comcast has submitted a grant application to extend service to 5 of those homes. The infrastructure bill also defines anyone getting under 100 megabits per second download and 20 megabits per second upload speeds as being underserved. In fact, any provider receiving money under the infrastructure bill has to deliver 100 megabits per second download and 20 megabits per second upload speeds in the service they provide through those new connections. Based on the speed test results we received, it appears that the average Patton broadband user is not getting this level of service, and on this mainly on the upload side, and would be considered underserved under this definition. I'll just note that all unserved households are required to be connected before infrastructure bill funding can be used to address underserved households. That's part of the bill. What we heard from Patton residents through the survey is that they feel they're getting poor performance for the cost of their broadband, and that it is the result of a lack of competition. The data provided in our report suggests this is likely to be the case, and I'll refer you to the report for the specific details. Patton's current broadband model is basically a single vendor model. Comcast is the only broadband provider that serves most of the township. The group also considered 2 other existing models elsewhere in the country. The first is the Chattanooga EPB, which is an electrical authority that added broadband to its mandate. It's generally considered to provide the best service in the country according to a leading consumer ratings organization that I cannot name, but you know who they are. I should note that EPB's infrastructure was built with federal stimulus money in the late 2000s. Regardless of whether the township is interested in being or finding a broadband authority, however, it doesn't matter. Per the legal opinion we solicited, broadband authorities are not permitted under Pennsylvania state law. So the model of providing direct ISP services using an authority, as with water or sewer, is off the table. The other model we considered is probably best represented by an ISP called Utopia Fiber in Utah. Utopia Fiber provides fiber optic connections, and then customers choose an ISP to provide service over that infrastructure. This is the exact same model adopted by the state of Pennsylvania for electrical service. You pay an infrastructure cost, and then if you go to papowerchoice.com, you can choose a provider to provide the electricity that you consume in your household. The study committee liked this model very much, but it is dependent on private providers entering the marketplace. So what does the committee recommend? First, infrastructure investment is expensive, but federal funding is imminent. The committee recommends the township identify someone who has responsibility to pursue funding on behalf of the township. Second, the township needs to pursue funding with a shovel-ready project, so we recommend the township work with private partners to develop a fairly detailed proposal to be funded. The committee discussed the idea of a Patton Township fiber optic ring that could be accessed by private providers to connect businesses, support economic development, and bring fiber closer to Patton Township neighborhoods. Third, residents have clearly expressed a preference for more broadband options. The group believes the township should express a preference for working with partners that support an open network model of broadband provision, as in the Utopia Fiber model. Fourth, there was a general consensus that the fiber optic technology was the preferable technology for broadband, We heard this even from some wireless ISPs. Study committee believes the township should identify fiber optic infrastructure as preferable to all alternatives unless it's physically impossible to implement. Fifth, the committee notes that the definition of broadband is a moving target. The township should be ambitious in its plans to avoid always chasing the tail of broadband on behalf of its residents. And I'll just note that in terms of broadband standards, there are many. There's actually a USDA standard, which is 10 download, 1 upload, which everybody agrees is obsolete. There's an FCC standard that's 25 down, 3 up, which is the one that people currently point to, but obviously doesn't meet the standards of the infrastructure bill that was just signed. And in addition, there's a bipartisan Senate proposal that would set the standard at 100 down and 100 up that's been embraced by the ISP community as, the open ISP community as probably the standard to work towards. Finally, the committee believes the township should be prepared to make forward-looking investments in broadband infrastructure, the same way it has historically invested in other types of infrastructure like roads, sewer, and water. And I will be happy to answer any questions or request that you take action to accept the report.
Questions from the board? Yes, Betsy Whitman.
So I'm psyched about Patton taking the lead on this. Have other municipalities expressed any movement in this area or interest in that area?
I'm not aware of it at the municipal level. I know that the county is preparing to essentially develop a process for distribution of the substantial broadband funding that's included in the infrastructure bill that was recently signed, recently being Monday.
Yeah.
I'll just add that it's my guess that funds that would come to the municipality would probably come through the county process. And I've certainly talked to them. They're interested in soliciting input about how this fund should be expended.
So a follow-up to that, so is there an advantage, do you think, to get, to partner with other townships, or not so much partner, but just work together?
I certainly think that it makes a lot of sense for any infrastructure project to make it a regional project. You might remember in 2009 we talked about the possibility of doing regional signal coordination, and that's something that you would have to do regionally because the roads cross municipal boundaries. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I will just say that from my experience, the problem is it's a complex undertaking to try to herd the cats and get the group to essentially come together on a particular plan.
And I have a question about the technical question, I guess, this image of a circle. Would that essentially, it wouldn't have to go on the outline of Patton Township, it could go somewhere within it, and I'm assuming that it could radiate out and radiate in.
Right. You might imagine it, for example, going from here over to Toft Trees, out Fox Hill Road, down Burnell Road, across 550, coming back through Grays Woods, and then coming back up North Atherton. That would be essentially a ring that you could bring back together. And the advantage of a ring is always, and we just concluded a 9-year regional fiber project to develop a regional fiber ring in the center region, going back to your center region question. And that project, the benefit of it is that if the ring is at any point cut, service can continue by essentially being routed around the other direction of the ring.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's currently lots of service up and down Atherton, but once you get away from Atherton Street, then it's, other than Comcast network, it's pretty lacking.
Right.
Other questions, comments from the board?
Very good.
Yes, Supervisor Tees, go ahead.
Yes, first of all, I think it's wonderful that the township initiated the study 2 years ago, and we're ahead of the curve. Congratulations to all the folk who planned ahead, and Mr. Luck especially. If one is looking at a regional focus, should our next step be to present this to COG?
Not necessarily. I mean, it does not need to be a regional project. I would say we're probably better positioned to start figuring out how we get that ring that Jeff just described. In all cases, you probably want to end up with a ring, so it's not necessary. We can talk to other people. I think it may be more of who's interested, let's get together and talk about it, than to try to shoehorn it into COG somehow at this point.
Yeah, I would just say that there is being assembled right now, and hopefully be done in about 6 months. There is in fact a regional fiber ring that's being built, which connects, Doug's going to tell me here, connects Patton Township, College Township, the COG, Alpha Fire, and who am I missing?
I think Ferguson.
Ferguson Township also came in and became part of that project. So that creates a regional ring that transcends the region, and in theory, non-governmental entities, other governmental entities can connect to that ring. As part of that project, the very beginning of that project, we actually did do, we sent out a request to all of the regional municipalities to say, where are your destinations that you would like to have connected to the ring? So we actually do have a spreadsheet that has all of those destinations on it. I think in that project, what we discovered is you kind of have to start somewhere. And so, you know, the destinations that were laid out were numerous, and to try to essentially, you know, eat the elephant whole was essentially an impossibility for the region to undertake. So if you think of this big ring, you know, the Patton ring in theory essentially becomes a subset of that larger ring. And, you know, the difficulty here is that the federal funding is imminent for people to essentially start at this point trying to develop plans around how to expend the money, which is in the process of being distributed, I think would be a difficult lift at this point.
The main cost of such a project is going to be either hanging the fiber from poles or putting it into a conduit underground. It's really going to be somewhat of a fixed cost per mile. So, you know, aggregating doesn't really get us a whole lot unless we went like 100x maybe. But 10x probably isn't going to get you any more than 2x. So.
Right, and I should emphasize that you know, most of these projects, and Chattanooga in particular is the one that everybody holds up from the fiber authority standpoint. They built their entire network with Tiger stimulus funds. So, you know, it is expensive to do fiber. Fiber is the infrastructure that lasts the longest. It has, as far as we know, currently it has no capacity limit. You can run 10 gigabits over it, which is what we're doing for the regional fiber. That can be upgraded to 100 gigabits. And by using other technologies, you can then up it from there. And actually, currently, nobody knows what the maximum amount of data is that you can push through a fiber. So once you've installed fiber optic cable, it is infrastructure the way that we all know infrastructure, like water, sewer. It's going to last for decades, and it's not going to be limited in the future in terms of its performance. So it's expensive. The opportunity is that if you can get in on the federal funding opportunity, that potentially you can actually do it. You can afford to do it. And so that's kind of what the hope is here.
Sounds great.
Other questions or comments from the board? Then I'll take the opportunity. Well, public comments. Do we have members of the public here? It looks like no one's online here. We have no phone calls calling in.
Yeah, we're not doing phones anymore.
Okay.
Zoom and in person.
So let me just ask a question then. Jeff, you're recommending a champion. Identify and empower a champion.
Yes.
That is responsible for pursuing funding for Patton Township priorities. What are your thoughts about that? What is your recommendation about finding a champion?
I don't actually have a recommendation around that. I think it's something that probably needs some discussion. I don't know whether it is a current, the question is it somebody who's currently on staff for Patton Township? And it could be that everybody's maxed out in terms of what they're doing. It would have to be somebody that the township would bless as being able to speak on behalf of the township, if it's not someone who's currently staffed. So I actually don't have a particular recommendation about that right now. I do have, so there's a second level of that, which is the partners to help develop a proposal that then obviously the township can present for potential funding. I do have a couple of recommendations that I can make around that, people who can bring the technical chops to put that together, hopefully to create a ballpark estimate so that discussions can begin, and then essentially to flesh that out into a full-blown proposal. But I actually don't have a recommendation for that first.
So what you're talking about as far as the second level, are these consulting firms or legal firms or?
It would be either ISPs that are willing to do it consulting, or it would be someone who's in the network development business who would do it on a consulting basis. Yep.
All right, so far as a township champion,
I say.
can you respond, Mr. Manager, do we currently have a staff member who?
No, I think we'd be looking at bringing some consultant on who would, again, we'd give them direction and they'd go out and talk to folks, come back and give us recommendations on what to do. I don't have it. I mean, we have money in our budget and in our CIP for next year.
75,000.
Yeah, we have 75,000 that we put in there as hopefully taking us to the next phase. I don't really have any estimates of what that'll get us, but I think Jeff's right. If we can put the pieces together to at least next year, this time next year, know what that ambitious aspirational project that Jeff described, what that might cost us, and who do we need to partner with? If we can answer probably those two questions by the end of next year, I think we'll be in really good shape. If the county comes up with some more money, that may accelerate that, and especially if we accelerate, we need to use a consultant. So I'll continue talking to Jeff and we'll figure something out and be back to the board at some point with a proposal on probably, obligating a part of that 75,000 towards one or two consultants.
Yeah. Well, just a second.
Oh, sure.
Betsy. Yeah, I personally, I just want us to proceed, continue to proceed forward, making progress, because that infrastructure bill that was just signed, it'll take 2 to 3 months for regulations to be created.
Thank you.
Maybe
All
longer. We're
that.
still waiting for the one on the ARP, which is signed in March.
But the point is, Doug's timetable, I agree, by this time next year, we should have a plan in place, a plan that's already developed, cost estimates and all that stuff, so that we would be eligible to apply for funding, whether it's through the county or through the state, depending on how they set that up.
Yeah, and then the other part of that process is, how do you, in reality, operate that network? I mean, who's the network operator? How do ISPs get, hooked into it? How do customers buy service?
You think a consultant would be, that's part of their,
I just wanted to say it's more than just doing the physical work with the fiber too. So there's some planning and programming that needs to be done.
Right.
It's not a 1-year project. It's probably at a minimum of something like a 5-year project or something like that.
I think, I'm sorry, Betsy, did you have some?
Oh, no, well, I was just going to ask if you, Jeff, would be interested in or consider yourself qualified to be either the facilitator or the champion.
I consider myself to be qualified potentially to be the facilitator, but I kind of need to talk to Doug to figure out how that would exactly work. I think that just to kind of go back to both your points, Dan and Doug, this project could be anything from an operating network to what they call dark fiber, which would just be the installation of the fiber for the purpose of having private providers then essentially acquire that fiber from the township to provide fiber optic connections to neighborhoods, for example. So there are several models here, and I'm assuming that as I said, the municipality can't go into the ISP business. Venango County did have a project where they essentially just provided dark fiber, and that is okay. And I think that's even actually addressed in the legal opinion that we received. So part of this is figuring out what level of municipal involvement in the ongoing operation is okay with that. And my guess is that the municipality probably isn't that interested in being involved in the ISP business because it's a very complicated business, is how do you go about selecting a partner who essentially operates or facilitates the creation of that infrastructure for you. Those are really the questions that you kind of have to tease out in order to get to a proposal that you then can present. And probably the proposal is going to be presented with your private partner. That's usually how it happens. And so, that's the process that's the road we need to get out and figure out exactly what we're talking about when we talk about in Patton Township infrastructure to support broadband.
Other questions or comments from the board? Yes, Elliot, go ahead.
Maybe this is too early, but I think we should set up some type of a loose calendar of where we expect to be at different stages during, say, the next year to make sure that we're on target and keeping on track of this project. So, for example, we might discuss in January one thing and something else a month later, and we should at least establish an outline like that.
Is that
I
something?
could discuss that with Jeff, and we can probably figure out some milestones. So.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much,
excellent.
Jeff.
Thank you.
I know
Thank
you
you.
put in a lot of work in the committee as well. Explanation of,
It's one of the maps from the download speed data that we had. So each one of those dots is somebody who was reporting a download speed.
is that from
The survey.
this is from the survey, I see, because there were some neighborhoods not represented. That means that person, we didn't get any survey responses from those neighborhoods.
Right, although all those roads to the left, the upper left, are actually the spray fields behind Toff Tree, so you probably won't get a lot of responses from there.
Okay.
Could I ask the board to accept the report?
I will accept a motion from the board to accept the report.
So moved.
Moved by
And
Betsy Whitman, second.
second.
Second by Elliot. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. Good job.
Okay, the next item is
Oh, yeah. Good, good.
the 2022 budget public hearing. Larry?
All right, so, last week, on November 10th, we presented and tentatively adopted the budget for 2022. Tonight, we're going to have a public hearing and a work session for the budget with the hope that if we don't have any changes, any major changes, that we can do a final adoption of the budget in the CIP in the meeting on December 8th. When we talk about a major change, we're talking about anything that increases the budget greater than 10% in the aggregate, or more than 25% in any major category. Any reductions to the budget, we are not considered a major change. The budget was advertised in the Center Daily Times on Monday. This public hearing was advertised with that budget on Monday in the Center Daily Times. The budget has been available for inspection on the website, in the lobby here at the Township office and at the SCLO Library since last Wednesday, I believe. So the first thing I wanted to discuss was the proposed rates that are in the 2022 budget. There's no increase in the real estate taxes being proposed for 2022. We're still going to be at 8.9 mils for real estate with a 0.6 of a mil for open space preservation. Also included in the budget is 0.5% for earned income tax, $52 for local services tax, and 0.5% for real estate transfer tax. And the earned income tax, the LST tax, and the real estate transfer tax are all at the maximum permitted by law. The allocation of the 2022 proposed rate doesn't change from 2021. The amount for general funds are 6.2 mils. For debt is 1.2 mils. For open space preservation is 0.6 of a mil. For the library is 0.4 of a mil. For parks capital improvements is 0.7 of a mil. And for fire is 0.4 of a mil, for a total of 9.5 mils. The 2022 proposed revenues are $14.2 million, 4.6 of real estate taxes, $300,000 in tax for open space preservation, 2.3 for earned income tax, $800,000 for other taxes, which is LST and real estate transfer tax, intergovernmental payments of $5.4 million, and non-tax sources of $680,000. The proposed expenditures are $13.7 million. That's $1.6 million in general government services, $3.6 million for police, $4.8 million in public works operations, $6.7 million in engineering, planning, and zoning, and parks and recreation, $1.1 million in community services other, $575,000 in debt service, and $245,000 for the open space debt service. That gives us with the 14.2 in revenues and the 13.7 in expenditures, an increase in the fund balance of $463,000 with a year-end fund balance of $1.8 million, which is 13.2% of operating expenditures. The personnel costs and benefits that are proposed in the budget is a 4% COLA for non-uniform employees. That was 1.7% in 2021 and 2.4% in 2020. It also includes a 1.25 merit increase for non-uniform employees on their anniversary dates. The police contract, which will be completed at the end of 2022, was for 3 years with a 3.25% increase per year. There was a 2.2% increase in health insurance costs through Benecon, and the employee contributions we make to health insurance for non-uniform, it's 12% of the total cost, and for uniform, it's 9% of the total cost. So like I said, that is the presentation for the public hearing and work session, and if there isn't any changes, we'll have the final adoption in the next meeting on December 8th. And I'll take any questions prior to you opening the public hearing.
Questions from the board? Comments? Then I will open the public hearing. time to accept questions or comments from the public. This is your opportunity if you're here. Jeff Luck, yes.
I'm Jeff Luck, a Patton Township resident. I'm assuming that the millage increase over time is still below the rate of inflation?
Yes, it is.
Yes,
Do you have last week's?
the Jeff Luck draft is in the budget.
Yeah, so what it is, Jeff, if I remember correctly, is the inflation going back to, it goes back to like 2005, and the inflation rate has gone up like 50% over that time, whereas the millage increase has only gone up about 21.
Right, and so I'm going to make my standard comment, which is that because municipalities don't escape inflation any more than anyone else, and because of the way that the property tax is structured, it's almost inevitable that you're going to have to raise millage. And I think it's certainly a credit to Patton Township that the millage rate increases have been below the inflation rate literally for as long as I've been paying attention, which is at this point something like 15 years. So I just wanted to say, good job. I've always wanted to come up and say that as a...
Thank you.
We'll take it.
Yeah, well, you helped start that trend, Jeff, when you were a supervisor. Yeah, I agree. It's been 9 years that we haven't had a millage increase, other than the open space preservation addition.
Actually, yeah, it goes back to 2010, I think. It's
Oh, so
definitely
11
before my
years.
time.
11 years.
Yeah, it's 10 years,
And you
10,
worked,
11 years,
10,
yeah.
yeah.
you worked hard this last year.
It was,
I know.
every year it becomes
some
more and
stuff
more
around.
difficult to
Yeah.
continue to provide the services and not increase the millage, that's true.
Well, you made note also in your summary, that document that Doug pulled out, about the impact of the American Rescue Plan money. That if we did not have the American Rescue Plan money, we would certainly be looking at a millage increase.
Yes, it is going to help us, but really in our budget for 2022, it's an in and an out, so
Yeah, it helps. I mean,
yes.
yeah, a good part of that fund balance is
Yeah.
American
Sure.
Rescue Plan money.
That's
Right.
correct.
Yeah. Any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Now, board members, any comments, questions? Seeing none, we will then have our final adoption of the budget December, what is it, 6th?
December 8th
8th,
at 5 o'clock.
December 8th, 5 o'clock. So that's the deadline for indicating any possible questions or comments about the budget. So let's move on. Thank you, Larry. Next agenda item is Public Works Fall Road Report. Doug?
That's me.
Alex is going
Oh,
to.
Alex, I'm sorry. Our incoming township engineer and director of engineering, planning, and
And zoning.
zoning.
Correct. So this will be the only time I do this report, so.
Go ahead, Alex.
So every fall and spring, our Public Works Department does an inspection of our 60-plus miles of roadway. And this report is a result of that inspection. So the graphic you see on the screen shows that 66% of our roads are in good, very good, or excellent condition, and 34% of our roads are in fair or poor condition. The table here is our tentative road resurfacing program for next year, and I was going to take you on the street view to show you where they are. So the first one is Devonshire from Valley Vista to Brittany. So this piece right here. Briarwood Lane, which is between Westgate and Highland. Canterbury Drive from Douglas to Candlewood. And Weymouth Circle, which is off of Sylvan Drive back here. So those are the roads we have planning to resurface for next year. Our deferred sections are sections that rate highly but are deferred for different reasons. The section of Ira Boulevard from basically Oakwood Avenue to the township line, we have in a capital improvement project, so it's programmed. Grayswoods Boulevard from Scotia to Pin Oak, there's minor maintenance required on that road, so our crews will do that in-house. Top Trees Avenue is also from Resort Drive to Kirklewood, it's also a program project. Purdue Mountain Road from Valley View to the township line, we had applied for a county LFT grant for that, so hopefully we'll hear back regarding that soon. In 2023, our potential candidates are Top Trees Avenue from Presidents to Fox Hollow, Wattle Road from basically Oakwood to Viro, and South Barkley Lane. So do you have, I guess I could also go through here. One second. So also in the report, there is a sorting of the roads by overlay rating. So the higher the rating, the worse the condition of the roadway. And the last table in the report has the roads all listed by alphabetical order. So that's the end of the report. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from the board or the public? Yes, Betsy, go ahead.
I wanted to know, is that posted somewhere on the website, or is there a link to that?
To the report?
Yeah, or the report and/or at least this tentative table of...
Not yet. But
Is it-
we can put that up, you know.
Is it commonly posted on the website?
Hasn't been in the past.
No, not necessarily. We do notices. We will send out notices to all the residents along the streets before we start,
Okay.
you know,
Yes.
giving them a heads
For
up
sure.
of what's gonna happen, so, you know, what days we think they're gonna pave and if parking needs to be restricted and things like that, so.
Okay.
Generally when these roads come up on our fall road report, then we also do a handful of other things. We'll go and inspect the sidewalk, along those streets.
Okay.
And if there's sidewalks and property owners are responsible for the sidewalk in front of their property. So if there's any defects that need to be corrected, we notify those residents at the same time. Most of these streets we're doing curbing on also, so that'll create some parking issues, but we getting pretty good at these types of projects. So we did Hillside last year and I think it went really, really well. We also then will go through on these streets and we'll replace all the signage that's on the street, so everything's nice and shiny and new when it's all done. We should be good for another 20, 25 years for the ones that we're doing this year, so.
And if there's stormwater updates, like
Yeah.
pipes, they'll check the
Yeah,
pipes.
so we'll go and inspect all the stormwaters under, and then the other thing, the reason that we do the 2 and 3 year out forecast too, is that information goes to like UAJ and the Water Authority and Columbia Gas and all the folks that have stuff buried under our streets say, okay, we're gonna look at these streets in 23 and 24. So if you got things you need to do, plan on doing them before we get there with the paving.
I will say, it is a question that I get occasionally from people. You know about our street? You know, it's always in my backyard or my front yard, so. Anyway. So I will just refer them to our township engineer.
That would be the best thing to do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have a couple. Alex, on deferred section Viro Boulevard rating 92, it's the highest rated. So what is a program project? Why is that getting attention?
That project, there's some stormwater updates that need done on that road, from Oakwood down to the township line. So there's stormwater work that needs to be done before we pave. So it's programmed into CIP and it was deferred due to COVID, so we just didn't get to it yet.
It's not unsafe or anything. Part of what drives these numbers are traffic. The formula that calculates that score is somewhat dependent on traffic. And when you have high traffic roads, it tends to drive the scores up a little bit more than probably should. So that's why you see a lot of the major roads will end up on the deferred list generally for a few years before they actually get some work on them.
My second question, because of I'm sure my age and inability to remember certain things, I do remember several years ago residents of North Oak Lane complaining that they had no curbs anymore because apparently did we ever fix that?
North Oak is on the list for 2024.
Those are 2024, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have repaired some sidewalks in that area. They were having problems with the water leaving the road and getting under the
Right.
sidewalks. We have done some sidewalk repairs, but yeah, as Alex said, even with the curbs as they are, there are a lot of other streets in the same boat. And
Oh, yeah, I see, yeah, North Oak.
yeah,
Okay.
so
All right.
I had that conversation with a couple of residents last year too. I said, well,
Yeah, I know.
it's on, it's coming up. We've just got to get through the list of the other ones
Okay.
before we get to you. But
Thank you.
Okay.
so, and that'll do everything. That's Galen all the way down to Douglas. So everything on, we'll call the steep side of North Oak.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Elliot, go ahead.
Alex, I think you have done an excellent job paving the way to a successful program during the next year. And Betsy, I think that your idea of posting the road condition report could avoid a possible pothole with the citizens not understanding what the conditions that their streets are considered to be.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Alex. So moving on, item 7, COG budget review. Thank you, Eric and Joe, for waiting patiently for this item. Doug, you or Larry going to introduce this?
This summary budget has been forwarded from the general forum to the member municipalities for consideration. You're going to get one more chance to review. This is your last chance, I guess, to review it and provide comments. I have included links to all the backup documents that COG has created leading up to this summary budget summary budget document. There's the detailed budget, the program plan, and the CIP. All those are elements that go into getting us to the COG summary budget. Any comments that the board does provide tonight will go to the Finance Committee, which is meeting tomorrow. Ultimately, if there's questions, Finance can work on those and staff. And ultimately, it's up to the municipalities to individually adopt the COG budget at individual meetings between now and the end of the year. Our adoption does come with our adoption of the township budget, because that includes all the contributions that are programmed to COG for 2022. So if there are questions or comments, we have, as you noted, Eric Nornberg, who's the executive director, and Joe Vigileone, who's the finance director for COG, are with us and available to answer questions.
Okay, let me ask Joe and Eric, is there any presentation you wanted to make?
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would add to the remarks that Doug shared is to note that there was a vigorous review process by the COG Finance Committee. There were a number of items that were discussed, and if you note on page 12 of the summary budget in the transmittal memo, there is information on some of the changes that were made from the detailed budget to the summary budget that adjusted the final figures a bit and shifted the timing of a couple of key things. But overall, I think the process was one that was very satisfactory to most of the municipalities. We've had very little comments throughout the review, and your discussion tonight will be the final of the 6 municipal comment discussions. So we look forward to answering any questions that you have.
Thank you, Eric. I will just remind the board, which I think I said at our last board meeting, since I'm on the finance committee, I participated in that whole process. The initial budget presentation was a total of let me just back up here. I don't think I have the correct numbers in front of me, but I will say that through working together with COG staff and the finance committee, the budget that we're reviewing now was reduced quite significantly by over a percentage point, and Patton Township's contribution was also correspondingly reduced. So it was a very good process, in my opinion, that we went through, give and take, and a lot of adjustments by the staff, COG staff. So I'm satisfied that the final budget they're presenting to us and asking us and asking Finance Committee tomorrow morning to approve and present to the General Forum is very well crafted. Any comments? Any other comments?
I just want to say
Yeah.
thank you. I know it was tedious. I knew it was quite hard. And having Dan on the finance board really gives us extra eyes on what we should be looking at, what we should be changing. And to Eric and Joe, thank you. And to your wonderful staff, because this was hard. This was very hard this year due to COVID and the changes that you had to do in order to move this forward. So I thank you. I thank Dan for our board to moving this forward. Thank you.
So Eric and Joe, it looks like our board consensus is that we, other than congratulations on a job well done, we have no comments from the board to present for consideration by the Finance Committee tomorrow morning.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and participation in the review process. It began way back in the summer and concluding tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, moving on, manager's report. Doug?
Thank you. You had included in the supplemental materials that came out yesterday a thank you letter from First Night State College for our $600 donation, which will create 2 of the smaller sculptures. So I encourage you to go downtown on New Year's Eve and check out all the festivities. Upcoming events, our office will be closed 25th and 26th. We are open on the 29th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving, and bulk waste collection is the week of December 13th. End of my report.
Any questions or comments for the manager? Yes, Anita, go ahead.
I just wanted to commend our manager I received, which I forwarded to Doug, a request from the Home Foundation for support for a grant that they are applying for, and they were on deadline for it, and Doug got the letter out immediately today to support their grant request. Just excellent work and on deadline as well. It makes Patton Township look very good. This is the same focus that Supervisor Rob has proposed for ARP fund support, but the Home Foundation that Morgan Wasakonis, who we mostly know through Housing Transitions, who's a Patton Township resident, they are applying for this grant, but Doug got it out, same day request to meet their deadline. Well done. Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on, committee reports. We have two committee reports, Parks Capital and the Joint Public Safety, PSC, TLU committees that met. Do either of you, our representatives, either of you wish to have any further comment further on what you submitted in writing? No? Okay, thank you very much. Note that Finance and Executive Committees meet tomorrow. Finance first and then Exec afterwards, so I'll have a written report for your perusal at our next board meeting. Last page, you see future meeting dates and et cetera. Anything else that the board or the staff wish to bring to our attention? Seeing and hearing.
Hello.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Pam, go ahead.
I'm sorry that Eric from COG had left our board meeting. I wanted to thank him and COG for acknowledging Veterans Day, especially for the veterans that are his staff at COG and just officials that I've learned were also veterans, to say thank you. But they always say we save the best for last. I would be remiss if I did not thank Susan Hahn, who was at the Quilt of Valor, Councilman Paul Tackett, good friend, I apologize, Dr. Mark Stevens, who is Patty Stevens' husband, who also took time out, Dr. Stephanie Preston, Teresa Hamilton, and my good friends Elizabeth and David Price. Thank you all. And you heard it from Dan, but to Dan, Doug, and Chief Jolly, from me, thank you for taking the time out to come. It really meant a lot to me to have Patton Township in support. And we had the biggest table, so thank you.
It was certainly my pleasure. Thank you for inviting us. Any other items to bring to the board? If not, I'll entertain motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And thank you, Sharima Young.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Motion carries. We are adjourned.